Thank you very much for allowing me to speak before you. Before I say anything, I want to echo my dear friend and dissident colleague, Professor Chow Win's remarks about how grateful we, a handful of Burmese, Buddhists, Christians, and others, are towards both the government of Bangladesh and emphatically towards the people of Bangladesh. This appreciation, this gratitude is heartfelt when what we are witnessing in our own native country of Myanmar or Burma is what the American black civil rights writer James Baldwin called the death of a nation's heart. So what we are witnessing is the death of compassion, the death of a conscience of a nation, the death of concern for the most vulnerable community that the Burmese call, using racial slur, Bengali, whereas in fact they belong there, as Professor Chow Win said. I have about 10 slides I want to go through. Before I do that, I want to say that about 2 weeks ago I came here and visited the Cox's Bazar's camps for about 2.5 days. And when I first met a group of survivors, I don't call them displaced people. I don't even call them refugees. These are legal terms or like politically calculated terms. I call them survivors because they just survived genocide next door, and they are no less than the survivors of the Holocaust, the survivors of the Khmer Rouge genocide, the survivors of the 1971 liberation war, and West Pakistan genocide of Bengali people here. So why should we create a new category for them, whereas in fact their experience of suffering has been universally experienced in different societies by different people? So I went there, and I could not bring myself to say a single word. When I was first, finding myself in the room with about 12 Rohingya women, most of whom survived sexual violence of the most sadistic kinds. And I won't recount the stories. There have been there have been more than enough documentation about what has been done to the Rohingya people next door. But I'll say this: although I'm a small person, I felt the weight of responsibility as a Burmese and a Buddhist at that, and someone who came from an extended military family, where one of my late relatives was deputy commander in charge of Arakan back in 1959 to 1961. He was also deputy administrator of Maung district, where Rohingyas were predominant majority, where when they were accepted as full citizens of Burma, at the time the Union of Burma, both by the elected government of Prime Minister UNU and the Ministry of Defense headed by General Ne Win. So the most important thing to remember is that Rohingyas were officially recognized by the state of Burma as both an integral ethnic community of the Union of Burma and full citizen. So the persecution of Rohingya rests on a single manufactured lie that Rohingyas do not belong in Burma. They speak a dialect of Chittagonian language, therefore they are Bengali. So everything that is said by Aung San Suu Kyi, everything that is said by the head of armed forces, Min Aung Hlaing, everything that is said by the ambassadors from Burma in Dhaka, UN, Geneva, everywhere, it all rests on this lie. Rohingyas did not exist, they do not exist, they have never been a part of Burmese ethnic tapestry. This is important because when a state, aided by non-state actors such as Rakhine Buddhists and Buddhists at large in Burma, attempts to intentionally destroy a community in all senses of the word, starting with the frontal assault on their identity and their right to identity, their history, their physical presence, their biological presence. That is a classic realm where genocides take place. In 1935 September, the Nazis gather at Nuremberg, the famous Nuremberg gathering. There, the Nazi party announced that German Jews were not Germans. In fact, Jews were in Germany before Germany became Germany. That is why Professor Amartya Sen, one of the greatest, Bengali intellectuals at Harvard, who was born in Dhaka, Amartya Sen said, Rohingyas did not come to Burma. Burma came to Rohingya. By that he meant Rohingyas were there before the creation of the post-independent state of Burma. And yet, this new invented entity we call today Burma has not only displaced the Rohingya, but attempted intentionally and as a matter of policy over the last 40 years to destroy this community, What the international community has seen recently in the social media, in the mainstream real-time media, is simply episodic violence that just unfolded. What has been going on is a slow process of genocide. Let me just run through a few slides so I can finish quickly. I got it. Yeah. So, like every other Burmese, I too was brainwashed into thinking that Rohingyas did not exist in my country. I left my country at the age of 25 to study in California. This was in 1988, July, 1 month before the nationwide uprising broke out. And I had nothing to do with politics. And my goal was to become a teacher, not to get involved in politics, much less to be an activist for the last 29 years. This is not what I thought I would do at the age of 25. Yeah? I am a human rights activist by necessity. By necessity, because my country is committing heinous crimes, not just against the Rohingya, but other ethnic communities that are not Buddhist, that are not Burmese, that are on the periphery borderlands of Burma. But what distinguishes the persecution of Rohingyas from the persecution of other ethnic minorities such as Karens, Kachin, Shan, Mon, and others is this. The state of Burma recognizes other ethnic communities as integral part of Burma. And what they are trying to do over the last 60 years since independence is to subjugate other minorities so that the Burmese military and the Burmese political class will have a total control over the land, resources, population that essentially belong to the other non-Burmese ethnic group and non-Buddhist communities as well as Buddhist communities. If and when the other minorities, non-Rohingya minorities, submit themselves to this political will of the Burmese military and political class to control them, the persecution will stop. The war will stop. In other words, if other people surrender, other people stop resisting the Burmese military's attempt to subjugate them, they will be made second-class citizens, but they will be left alone. In contrast, in sharp contrast, nothing Rohingya do will please the Burmese military because it has a genocidal intention. Because it is the fact that Rohingya exist and that they exist as Rohingyas is considered a crime to the Burmese military, a threat to national defense. For two reasons. One, Rohingyas are the only Muslim community in Burma of all the 17 different ethnic Muslim communities that have their own ancestral land right next to Bangladesh, Chittagong and Arakan. They are geographically connected, culturally intertwined, and linguistically overlapping. Yeah? So they don't want a Muslim community next to a populous Bangladesh because the Burmese military created the false perception that the Rohingyas can be used by East Pakistan then and after 1971, the independent state of Bangladesh, as proxy in the event Bangladesh has to relieve itself of demographic pressure by snatching this stretch of land called Arakan coastline. Because of these two religions, there is a population predominantly Muslim, and that population could be used as proxy by a neighboring state of Bangladesh. Rohingyas have been targeted as a threat to national security. The language the Burmese military use, and that has been popularized, is a fortress language. We refer to the Arakan coastline as the western gate of Burma. If you look at the map of Burma, we are surrounded by 5 different countries: China, India, Thailand, Laos, and Bangladesh. We have only 170 miles long border with Bangladesh. We have over 1,000 miles long borders with China and India, and over 500 miles long borders with Thailand. Only in reference to the Rohingya area do we use the language Western Gate. You know, the Chinese have been coming in and migrating to Burma over centuries. Indians, the same thing. The Burmese also out-migrate. This is such a natural phenomenon, and yet we have marked the Rohingyas as a group that needs to be not simply, displaced, exterminated. Think about it. If the Bangladeshi armed forces, and if the Bangladeshi society, and if the Bangladeshi government did not open the borders in October, we would have seen 600,000 Rohingyas starve to death across the border. That is not a hypothesis. That is a very distinct possibility that could have happened. So this, and I want to talk about the actors. We talk about Aung San Suu Kyi and how powerless she is. No, she is not powerless. She has a moral authority to sway the public. When she came to London in 2012, I had the distinct honor of sharing the public panel at the London School of Economics. This was 5 years ago. There was no 969. There was no Mabata. Mabata is like National Defense, a Buddhist League. Yeah? And Suu Kyi refused to address this issue. Yeah, that has now become the defining issue of her leadership the defining issue of our country, and it is becoming the defining genocide of this early century. And she controls 5 different ministries that are integrally involved in the genocidal process of dehumanizing, spreading misinformation, dismissing and denying that atrocities have been committed against this helpless community. And this is, we have like 4 or 5 different pillars like any other society. We've got a spiritual pillar with Buddhist church and, followed by Christian and Muslim, spiritual leaders. We have the armed forces, the most powerful institution. We've got the National League for Democracy, the party of Suu Kyi that has the greatest majority in the parliament. And we have the intelligentsia. That is university professors, artists, singers, musicians, and writers, and whatnot, that are supposed to act as a collective conscience of a society when a society is turning fascist. And yet all of these elements, even including human rights activists and pro-democracy opposition dissidents who spent 10 plus years, some 20 years behind bars, survived tortures, they now close ranks. Today, Burmese dissidents, including Suu Kyi, use the language of their former tormentors and captors. They talk about national security. This is coming straight from the mouths of human rights dissidents, whose national defense, national security, not human rights, not citizenship rights. Yeah? So yesterday, the Pope was there. The Pope has been subject to intense lobbying from the Burmese Catholic leaders. Yeah? Yesterday was a dark day for the Catholic Church. As you know, the church, both Protestant and Catholic churches, in the 1930s, including the Vatican, collaborated with the fascist regimes of Hitler and Mussolini. And I'm afraid that the Catholic Church in Burma, if not the Pope, the Holy Father, is repeating the Church's ignoble history of collaboration and appeasing with the fascists in Burma. This is what the spokesperson for the Myanmar Catholic Bishops' Conference named Father Sonai said. For us, they are called Bengali. This is a sudden creation, despite the historical and official evidence to the contrary. Yeah? The genocide, any genocide, begins with the intent to destroy an ethnical, racial, religious, or national community as such, either in whole or in part. And it starts with assault on the identity. They don't exist. They never existed. They will never exist as they say they are. So we have a serious problem when all the leading institutions of Burma are involved in this genocide. The party, the armed forces, the Catholic Church, Buddhist clergy. Buddhist clergy, the most influential monk who was named as Sidaku, and he considered himself as peace missionary. On October 30th this year, he gave a 3-hour sermon to about 500 military commandos in a training school. The youngest was a major, the oldest was a brigadier general. And in a hangar, he gave a speech, 30 minutes of which was devoted to justifying genocide. Because he said, those who do not believe in Buddhism and Buddhist doctrine are only half human. Therefore, killing them by the millions is not bad karma. This is the most influential, the most revered Buddhist monk, patronized by the highest echelon of Burmese military. I shudder to think where this country is heading. And I no longer identify with that country. This is not the society where I grew up. This is not the country I love anymore. When your society, editorial your, if one society turns fascist, you want to be the enemy or enemy of that state. You want to betray that state. You don't want to be applauded. You don't want to be popular. So I'm standing here both as a fellow human and officially declared national traitor. I would do it 1,000 times when my society turned fascist. This is the historical. You cannot get any more primary than this documentation from 1789, written up by the Scottish medical doctor working for the British East India Company by the name of Francis Buchanan. It is absolutely crystal clear. The Rohingya existed as Muslims. They have their own language. They are the natives of Arakan, or today's Rakhine. And this is the official encyclopedia, published in 1964, 2 years after Ne Win came to power. And the other side is a national registration card issued to a Rohingya man. So this is my late great-uncle who passed away 2 years ago, and then me in the white shirt with him in Rangoon in 2005. He was deputy head of all Arakan forces at a time when Burma only had 4 divisions across the country. Yeah? And my great-uncle treated Rohingyas as fellow Burmese and with decency and humanity. I am not going to treat them otherwise. And this has been going on. The terror against Rohingya has been going on since February 1978. Yeah? And this is from Dhaka Tribune, Dawn, and other places. Amnesty International 10 days ago came up with a report saying that this is apartheid. Well, where have Amnesty International been over the last 39 years? In 1978, Far Eastern Economic Review, based in Hong Kong, used the term Burma's emerging, or Burma's brand of apartheid. Human rights community, human rights movement around the world has been asleep for 40 years. Apartheid has been in place for 40 years. It has genocidal characteristics. What are the characteristics? I'm going to, the 2 more slides and I'm done. One is the population control, because this population has an identity that we don't want to accept. We don't want Muslims. Yeah? So population control through severe marriage regulation, destruction of cultural and intellectual class. Basically, this genocide aims to kill the Rohingya communities and its collective mind. This is a community that once produced doctors, engineers, parliamentary secretaries, civil servants, and others. Now this community, if you go to Kutupalong, 80% of Rohingyas are illiterate, and that is the direct result of what we have done as a matter of policy. And then denial of access to what Amartya Sen called nutritional opportunities. Yeah? Raphael Lemkin, the man who coined the term genocide, used the terminology racial feeding. The German Aryans get food that was 80% nutritious, and the Jews got 16% nutritional food. And that is why World Food Program came up with a report July this year. Over 80,000 Rohingya children under the age of 5 live in semi-famine-like situation. That is the result of state policy. The Arakan is rich in soil and climate conditions, and we are putting them in a semi-starvation situation. Yeah? And we deny them access. If you look at the doctor-patient ratio, it is just absolutely shocking. For the nation as a whole, the average is 1 doctor will treat 685 patients. For the Rohingyas, there is 1 doctor for 150,000 Rohingya people. So like, you deny people access to food, you deny people opportunities to make a living, you deny people access to medicine, preventative and emergency care, you deny their community to grow intellectually and culturally, and then Rohingyas are not allowed to repair their mosque or places of worship. So all of this point to a situation that is far more than apartheid. These are the genocidal conditions. If you look at the Article 2C of the Genocide Convention, it basically reads, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of the group, we've seen it, be causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Hundreds of Rohingya women have been raped. Children were thrown into their burning houses. Immobile grandparents were left in the house. The house was, torched by the troops. And C, this is what got me and my wife to term this the slow burning genocide. Article 2C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And then, two more articles, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, marriage restriction. And finally, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. We Burmese do not even bother transferring children. We burn them alive. Yeah? And that is my country, and that is the country I no longer call my own. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Bangladeshi public, Bangladeshi government, we have a genocide. You have a genocide next door. This is not a Muslim issue. This is not a Rohingya issue. This is a human issue. Back in 1940s, people who grew up in Nazi-occupied Europe, the French, the Finns, the Norwegians, some of the countries that collaborated or that exploited business ties with the Nazis under the pretext of neutrality. Their children today ask their parents, what did you do when the Jews and the Romers and the communists were gassed at Auschwitz and other places? The parents had to answer to them. We will be asked by our grandchildren when they read about this in history textbook. Mom, dad, granddad, grandma, what did you do when Burma was committing a full genocide over 39 years? And particularly, Bangladeshi children will ask their parents, did you do anything when your neighbor was committing a genocide against the entirely helpless community? So please, show your humanity. This is an affront to all of us. This is a human issue. This is not about religion, not about ethnicity. This is about a community being exterminated simply because of who they are, where they happen to be. Thank you very much.